Okay, next on my agenda is another British band, also from the lovely seaside city of Brighton, where house prices are incredibly expensive, but there's a lot of cool places to drink that I can't afford to go. That band is a much more established name, which you probably have heard of, called Architects. And this is their new album, All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us. So, Architects, been kicking about for a few years now, and they're often a band that unfairly and inaccurately gets lumped in with kind of the more kind of pretty boy metalcore bands that England often seems to produce, like Askin Alexandria and things like that. This is certainly an unfair categorization, and as I say, a very inaccurate categorization because they're about a lot more than that. Architects are incredibly technical, and they are incredibly experimental in a lot of places, and they also have a much more focused and ambitious songwriting craft than other bands they often get lumped up with. Now, they've released some incredible albums, and they've had a bit of a stumble as well, but overall they've got a really consistent work ethic, and even their worst moments contain some really worthwhile stuff. So, I mean, probably the classic album that people often cite is Hollow Crown, which was, an album of just searing intensity, mind-boggling technicality, with some really kind of strong choruses and strong vocals off their singer, Sam Carter. Now, they went for a kind of a different approach, with much more kind of melodic singing and much more I guess mainstream focused songwriting on one of their albums, which the name escapes me now, but the front cover was good, but that's probably about the best thing about it. It wasn't as bad as a lot of people said, but it definitely felt like there's been some kind of influence from record labels, from a producer, trying to actually put them on a much more commercial element. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, and it certainly works successfully for some bands like Bring Me the Horizon. Very, very commercial album they released certainly by metal standards, and it's brought them great success. But when a band is so wildly ambitious, talented, and experimental as Architects, there's a restriction that gets imposed on that by adopting that sort of approach. And I think what they actually realised was, well, a lot of our fans, they're not kind of into us for that, and they like the awkwardness, they like the experimental nature of what we do, and they like the abrasive edge of what we offer. So the next two albums, Daybreaker and Lost Together, Lost Forever, in particular, really play to that strength. Particularly Lost Forever, Lost Together, or Lost Together, Lost Forever, whatever it's called, I can't remember. It's a great album though. They really, really kind of just absolutely struck out on their own and said, this is Architects, this is the kind of sound we've got. Mixing the ambient electronica with crushing angular sugar-like riffs and the abrasive screams and the soaring vocals of Sam Carter. Now, on paper, that sounds like, a lot of kind of metalcore bands, but this is not a metalcore band. This is a band with truly progressive designs and a progressive approach, and a band that really kind of drills down on songwriting, and a band that's really harsh on itself, to the point where they didn't necessarily, really kind of rate Daybreaker. They thought it was better than the other one, but they heard an interview and they said, yeah, nearly, not quite. And Daybreaker's a fucking brilliant album. So they are, a lot of senses, their own harshest critics. So with Lost Together, Lost Forever, we thought, okay, brilliant. They've just absolutely smashed out a 10 out of 10, top draw, modern sounding, brilliant, vital, thrilling 21st century metal album. And brilliantly, though, they're a British band, which is what I thought. Now, with this album, what they've actually done is gone one better than that. This is an absolutely stunning, start to finish, phenomenal 21st century metal album. It's raw, it's powerful, it's technical, but it's got a lightness of touch, it's got a finesse, it's got a level of class to it that sets it apart from all the competition. Architects are completely in a genre and a category of their own right now. Architects sound like Architects. You know, there's a few touchstones you could say, well, this band does this band does this, but nobody does these elements quite the same as Architects do. They are a completely distinctive, self-sufficient unit. And this album kind of really is just absolutely the best elements of what modern metal is at the moment. It starts with a truly just neck-snapping killer opening song, one of the best opening songs I've heard in a long time, called Nihilist, which has the line, "All our gods have abandoned us." And not only have you got this kind of level of aggression and anger, not only have you got stunning riffs, the production on this just makes these riffs sound like actual planets colliding. But not only have you got that, but you've got just such angry, searing lyrics coming from often a very kind of humanitarian, environmental point of view as well. So, the kind of the greed, the corruption, the disgust at some of the pervasive ideas of particularly Western society, this kind of like greed culture, these kind of obsession with such shallow, empty things, is a constant theme throughout, and none more on this. So you've got God literally looking at the planet going, what the fuck has gone on here? And, the lines like, they'd sell their hearts if they were made as gold, if they were made of gold, but they're as worthless as the souls they've sold. Just brilliant lyrics, and, sung with such venom by Sam Carter. And, Nihilist, probably the most kind of fast, evil, nasty track on here. But, it doesn't end there. There's so many great moments on here, like Downfall. It's just a widescreen, massive, slap in the face song. It's kind of more kind of groove oriented, slows the pace a little, but it sounds so absolutely epic. And this is just a venomous attack on the banking system, and also, the politicians that are in the pockets of kind of big corporations and big banks and stuff, and how they've literally sold the country down the river. I think they're very specifically talking about England here, but it could certainly relate to a lot of other countries. And just the fact that, people are standing by, idly getting robbed, blind. And, again, the outrage in the vocals. What you've got here is a singing style, again, like on the Black Peaks thing as well. There's a lot of vocals that are halfway between screaming and halfway singing, but they sound so angry. And it's not like a young man just going, "Ooh, fuck the system, man." This is like informed adult weariness, like just it boiling over. It's like, Michael Douglas in Downfall or something. Not Downfall, Falling Down. Downfall's the Hitler thing. But, somebody that's just like literally cracking with the sheer weight of the shit that people have to eat on a day-to-day basis in so many areas of modern life. And, it just continues. Gone with the Wind, just an absolutely stunning single. About that real kind of feeling of emptiness. And it just, there's just so many kind of brilliant hooky riffs. And that's one thing that, you could accuse them of lacking on a lot of occasions, is going for the technicality over the catchiness. Now, they've effortlessly blended being an absolute monstrous riff writing with the technicality here. So these riffs you could actually hum. You might have a bit of difficulty, but they are things that stick in your head. It's just like that all the way through. There's so many great things like Death Wish, talking about watching the world burn. This is an album that is at both times amazingly complex, but also amazingly catchy, incredibly melodic, but incredibly brutal at the same time. And, none more is that summed up than the final track, Memento Mori, which sounds like some of the more kind of obscure, like electronic kind of soundscapes, almost like Aphex Twin at the start. It's got that kind of bleak post-rock space between things, but also it knows when to kick in and shred your face off with the riffs. And then right at the end, you've got some incredible kind of almost black metal blast beat moment that just kicks in. It just goes in all kinds of different directions, and everything about it feels organic. It doesn't feel like it's trying too hard. It doesn't feel like it loses its way. These are kind of incredibly focused, incredibly consistent songs with one moment of truly staggering experimentation at the end. I can't just find the words to actually express how just angry and alive and just fucked up this album makes you feel. But the only thing I could say is just check it out for yourself. If you've kind of thought about Architects before and you thought, well, they're not for me, you know, I don't want to listen to, you know, good looking lads playing kind of screamy metalcore and stuff. This is way more than that. This is a band striking out on his own. This is something that you know, can sit alongside the most acclaimed bands of our age now. These are people in the category of their own, and yeah, All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us. I mean, there's just so many fucking great moments. But yeah, I just check it out because, like I said, this has been a real vintage year for albums, particularly British albums, and this band are really on a tear, and I can't wait to see what they've got to offer next. But you know, this will rip your fucking throat out. So yeah, Architects, All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us. Don't abandon it. Check it out, and I will catch you again very soon for another absolutely gushing, unbearable arse kissing of some wonderful music. Catch you in a bit. Bye.